So let's talk about what happened on October 30th, 2025. A pretty normal day in Mumbai until a film studio, well, it turned into the scene of a terrifying crisis. We're talking about one man, 17 kids, and a standoff that had the entire city holding its breath. We're going to break down the story of that day and get into the really tough questions that came out of it. And really, the absolute heart of this whole thing, it wasn't the building. It was this number, 17. 17 children. They, along with two adults, were trapped inside, turning a simple film studio into ground zero for a city-wide emergency. You can only imagine, for the parents, for the police, the stakes were just astronomical. They couldn't have been higher. You can pretty much break this whole story down into three parts, right? First, you've got a desperate man, someone clearly pushed way too far. Then, a super dramatic rescue, a police operation where anything could have gone wrong. And finally, a deadly end. An ending that, yeah, it saved all the hostages, but it also cost the man who started it all his life. So to really get how it all ended, we have to go back to the beginning.
Okay, so let's try to understand the why behind all this. How does a dispute over a school project explode into a full-blown hostage crisis? To figure that out, we've got to look at the man right in the middle of it all, Rohit Arya. What was his grievance? What did he say pushed him to do something so extreme?
Right, so this was the big question on everyone's mind, wasn't it? Who was this guy, Rohit Arya? Was he just some monster? Or was he, a man who was just so desperate that he did something completely unthinkable? The investigation really had to start peeling back the layers on this one.
So the first picture that emerged of Rohit Arya was this. He's 38, from Pune, and he's connected to this studio, Arya Studio. He was even a YouTuber. And the motive he put out there was, well, it was pretty straightforward, and honestly, you can see why some people might have felt for him. He claimed he'd been completely wronged by the system. He said he did all this work for a government clean school project, and then nothing. No payment, no credit, just left hanging.
But it's rarely that simple. Behind that public story of being wronged, a much more complicated picture started to come out. Police records, they showed a whole pattern of private issues. There was a tenancy dispute, a fight over the studio itself, and there were even complaints about his behavior from people in the area. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about one injustice anymore. It was starting to look like a man dealing with one crisis after another. And here's the thing. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment breakdown. No way. The police found clear evidence that this was all planned out. Arya had basically turned the studio into a fortress. He'd installed motion sensors, extra CCTV cameras, new locks, the whole 9 yards. It's pretty clear he was preparing for a siege. So all of that preparation, it all comes to a head on October 30th. Let's switch gears now and look at the rescue operation itself. We're going to go through the tense, minute-by-minute effort to get 19 people out of there alive. Okay, here's how the day went down. It started with a trick, a lure. A fake audition ad was put out to get kids to come to the studio. Then, around 1:45 in the afternoon, police get a distress call from inside the building. It's the worst-case scenario. Cops swarm the place, and a super tense standoff begins. Arya's inside, making threats. This goes on for hours until the stalemate is broken when Arya actually fires an air gun at the officers. That's it. They breach the studio, and in that final, chaotic moment, all 19 hostages are rescued, totally unharmed. But Rohit Arya, he didn't make it out. So the hostages are safe. You'd think that's the end of the story, right? But the crisis, it was far from over. After all the chaos, the silence that followed was filled with some really urgent, really difficult questions. It wasn't just about how this could have happened, but about how it all ended. An incident like this, it's like holding up a mirror to society. It forced everyone to take a hard look at some big issues, like child safety. How are these kids so easily tricked? What about mental health? Was this guy just pushed over the edge by money and work problems? And then you've got these really thorny questions about systemic failures, like are government contract disputes creating these situations? And the biggest one of all, what about the police conduct? And yeah, out of all those questions, this is the one that really got heated. With Rohit Arya dead, was the police action, was it justified? Did they have to use lethal force? Or was there another way to end this? Well, this debate didn't just stay on the streets, it moved into the legal system. A lawyer actually filed what's called an FIR, that's a First Information Report, and it basically kickstarts a formal police investigation against the officers who were there. And the allegation was, frankly, explosive. They called it a fake encounter. Now, that's a term used in India for when police allegedly stage a shootout to cover up an extrajudicial killing. I mean, an accusation like that puts the entire police operation under a massive microscope.
Now, because these allegations were so serious, you've got accusations against the police themselves, the case was taken away from the local cops. It's now in the hands of the Mumbai Crime Branch, which is an elite unit. And that move is really designed to make sure the investigation is impartial, as they try to unravel this incredibly complex and sensitive case.
Look, in the end, 19 people went home safe. And that is an undeniable success. You can't argue with that. But the story, it just doesn't end there. We're left with this really tough, lingering question. So what do you think? Was this simply a tragedy averted by good, heroic police work? Or was it a tragedy that actually started way before that day? A symptom of much deeper problems in our society that we're just not talking about? That's the real question, and it's one we need to think about long after the news cycle moves on.